What are book visors? Ever had too many books, but not enough shelf space to actually display them? Well, that's what book visors are for. Well, it is just a book visor. You take a box, you put book on top of box. Why am I even explaining it? They're just anything you can fit underneath your books to make sure the back row is more visible and you can maximize your shelf space. Let's just jump to my go-to method, cardboard boxes. It's the cheapest and easiest option. If you already have some around your house, it basically costs nothing then. Just grab whatever boxes you have and stack your books on top. I'll get to cutting it soon. Just wait a bit. Some stuff that you can use are old shoe boxes, game cases, or bricks. If it's got a flat surface, it'll probably work. Actually, don't use bricks, unless you want your shelf to sag. Alright, before I go deeper into the boxes, let's talk about dimensions real quick. Because not every shelf is built the same. What I meant is, you don't want your risers so tall that your books barely fit under the shelf. Leave at least a few centimeters. Why the heck are you leaving a few meters? So yes, leave at least a few centimeters of clearance to avoid scraping the top. You kinda just want at least enough for your finger to fit in so you can pull the book out. Being too short also defeats the purpose. You might want it tall enough that you can still read the volume numbers, but that's up to your preference. Personally, I wouldn't put the books in any place that's quite higher than your eye level, especially since they're already behind a row of books. Here's some pictures I took from different angles. You can see the lower risers don't leave them particularly visible. I took the picture from a few steps back and I needed to tiptoe for the second and third one. And here's if I used the riser which I made the same height as the books. Or maybe it's just an issue for short people. Who asked you to be short? People below 5'6" shouldn't even exist. Don't worry, I'll be joining you guys. Again, for the risers, shouldn't be too heavy unless you're confident with your shelves. Then go ahead, use a brick. I don't know anyone who got bricks but not cardboard. On that note, I actually do have a brick here wrapped in cloth. Oh yo! Brick! See? Yeah, no, that wasn't nice. Sturdy. You really want a brick? Imagine that you can put 3 of them here. That would be like 7+ kgs. I guess it works. For choosing the size of the riser, you either have a decent amount of space to put at least 2 rows of book or just barely enough. So it depends on the depth of your shelf. For example, the shelf I got in my room here is the Billy bookshelf from IKEA. The website's really neat. You get to see a 3D model and spin it around. It really helps with choosing what I need. Not sponsored, but hey, I'm available. They also have all the measurements of it. Very neat. Fortunately, the normal Viz Media manga is just about 12.6 centimeters, so it just barely fits in 2 rows into the Billy shelf here. So yeah, a maximum of 13 centimeters or less for the riser on this one. Any bigger or uneven cutting will leave the book jutting out of the shelf. And yeah, no thanks. Here's just a couple of book sizes that I recorded for your reference. A PS Vita case, well yeah, not a book, but it's there. The size is 13.5 cm times 10.5 cm. The second one is a Japanese bunkobon, about an A6 paper size, which is said to be 14.8 cm times 10.5 cm. I'm not sure if my eye sucks, but I recorded mine to be 15.2 cm times 10.3 cm. I don't know. The third is a standard tankobon, which is most of the Japanese manga that you can find out there. It should have the dimensions of 17 times 11 centimeters, but the one I recorded is 17.6 centimeters times 11.3 centimeters. The fourth one here is a B6 size manga, which is almost exactly the same size as a basic paperback 7 Seas manga. An example I have is this A Certain Scientific Accelerator. The fifth one here is probably what you'd see the most, which is the industry standard size of most English localized manga. It's about 12.7 times 19 centimeters. The one I have here is a basic Viz Media manga. Some others that use the same size are Kodansha, Yen Press, Vertical Comics, Square Enix manga, and I guess Tokyo Pop does have the same size, like the Sergeant Frog manga I have. The sixth one here is a yen press light novel. The dimensions I recorded is 21 centimeters times 13.8 centimeters, but according to the yen press website, the trim size is 5.5 times 8.25 inches. For the seventh one, the Witch Hat Atelier here is 20.8 centimeters times 14.5 centimeters, which is more or less the same size as a Viz signature manga. It's almost A5 paper size, which is 14.8 times 21, but just a bit less than that. And the last one, Made in Abyss, is an actual A5, which I already said the numbers. Hopefully this is useful for you for choosing shelves, I guess? Or maybe just before you put 2 rows of book in your shelf. Something like a Manlax would fit 3 rows of a basic Viz manga, but you're not gonna see the 3rd row by then. Wow, finally we are at the cardboard boxes again. A round of applause for sticking by. So there seems to be about 3 most common cardboard boxes. The first is a flat fold box. They call it RSC, regular slotted container. Okay. And the second one is a 2-piece box, which is lid and body, a telescopic box. And the third one is a roll-end box, the one that has the flaps at the end. In terms of base sturdiness, I'd rank the 2-piece box as number 1, the second being the roll-end box, and the lastly being the flat fold box. However, the flat fold box and the roll-end box are usually much more common and cheaper. Oh, and also much more size options. I'm basically listing everything down so it's easier for you guys to search for it online. So measure your shelf and books and see what box sizes you need. Another thing that you can do is, if something like the width and length are perfect, but not the height, you could buy a box that's half the size and stack 2. More box, more structure. Finally, let's get into making our own book prizes using cardboard. So before we start, here's a couple of things you might need, and also the prices for it, so you understand how much I wasted for the highly advanced theory of box. Put book on top of box. To start, you'd want a big table or just do it on the floor. I couldn't record most of it properly because the cardboard was way too big for the table. The second thing you'd want is a cutting mat, or actually just use a bigger cardboard underneath. This cutting mat is way too small. You definitely need this unless you want your blade to chip and shatter, or to avoid leaving cuts on your table or floor. Thirdly, of course you'd want a box cutter. How else are you gonna cut it? Something like this is trashy, don't use it. You'd want something like this, at least one with a blade lock. And if you like wasting money like me, I got myself an Alpha L5. I heard it's like one of the best brands for box cutters. I got extra sets of 18mm blades for the box cutter and also the Alpha AK1, but I didn't need it for this video. So here's all of it. The first one's trashy, don't even use that one. I got it for free for a reason. It broke into pieces the first time I held it. The second one's much better but no lock for the blade. At least aim for the third one. The Alpha L5 is cool. It has a very short blade and a wheel lock that lets you adjust the blade length smoothly. But do you need it? Heck no! It's just me wasting money. I don't recommend using scissors because it's way too hard to cut cardboard with that. After that, a ruler and a pencil to measure and make markings. For the first few builds, I used duct tape, but afterwards, using a hot glue gun is quite better. Yes, I have a butter knife there. I used it to make the folds, but honestly, it's not that good. Why did I even use it? It sucks. What I meant is to make creases for the folds. Another thing that you can use is a bone folder, but I don't have that. Lastly, the box. Well, we are making book risers. You can't start without the riser itself, right? Honestly, I like to do a proper guide, but I suck at cutting. So here's some illustration instead on how I cut for each type of boxes. Back to the 3 boxes. Let's just start with cutting and maybe a little bit of tape. No need for glue. For the 2-piece, cut the top off. Now it's shorter. For the RCS, cut the corners, fold it inwards. Again, it's shorter. Roll-ends are hard to resize, you can only reduce its width. So cut the red parts off and fold at the blue lines. So it'll end up like the picture below. For the first 2, you can cut the sides, but now you need to glue a piece onto it. Now for the internal structure. Unless you don't care for it being smashed over time, I hope you got some remaining cardboard pieces left for making it. Just cut up one piece of cardboard with a bit less length and the height of your riser. Then cut up a few pieces of cardboard with a bit less width and height of your riser. This will be the pieces of the spine. To connect them, cut halfway through each of the pieces. If the piece is 10 cm, then make a 5 cm cut in the middle. Make multiple passes when you're cutting, do not press too hard. That's why I got multiple holes on my cutting mat. Even on my Alpha A3 cutting mat, yes. I cut through it because I'm stupid. Because I'm stupid, make sure not to be stupid as me. Don't press too hard. Oh yeah, bump those numbers up. Now, push a pencil, marker or pen along the line to widen it up so you can put the pieces together. There is Missknown who did her own book visor from scratch and made the internal structure like this. But I don't want to think too much on making this. You can check her process on it in the description below. Now take the spine thing you just made and put it in a box and close it. See if it works. You can glue it to the bottom if you want, but I think it's fine as it is, or tape the edges if you want to seal it. Remember, if you make the pieces exactly the same height as the visor, you'll have it jutting out like this when you're trying to close it. If it's a 2-piece box or a box that you made piece by piece, then I suppose it'll work. Regardless, you will be adding height to it, which you might not want. I wanted to end this part, but I forgot to list one more thing. The 8-piece box, or call it whatever you want. So for this one, you can either cut 8 separate pieces of board and glue them together to get the visor size you want. I use a hot glue gun. Or you can make a single box layout and fold it into shape, and it uses less glue, but it might be easier to mess up. For the side flaps, you've got 2 ways to do it. When you accurately measure the sizes, you might actually want to give a few millimeters for the hinges of each flap. Otherwise, it might leave a small hole at the top. Maybe it's just an issue for the thicker boards, and you might be adding 1 cm to the whole length while doing so. So maybe make the main length of the board a cm shorter for that. So here's one of my first attempts on making the visor. It's full of mistakes, but I guess learn from my mistakes then. So yeah, this is me doing the single box layout. Tapes don't hold too well. I should have just taped the corners from the outside. The internal support shape doesn't matter too much, I think. So I made an X here since the box was short. And like I said earlier, should have made the flaps longer. If it's longer, at least you can cut it down. This is quite ugly. Man, did I spend like an hour making this? What the heck? So here's my manga collection, and let's see how the visor holds up. So here it is. Honestly, it fits well. Its height is about a centimeter higher than I'd like it to be, but it does its job. However, the width was 1 cm more than what I wanted, so I made a new one. You can barely see any issues with it. I just had a problem because of that small jutting out. So don't be too much of a perfectionist. If it works, it works. The second option on this list is a flat top visor. Basically, it just means any sort of DIY thing with a flat top. Does that mean basically every visor in existence? Kinda. But okay, wait a bit. What I meant is putting a flat board on top of any sort of item, such as empty containers, phones, boxes, Legos, empty paper towel tubes, egg cartons. Oh shoot. Yikes. Some of you can't afford that, can you? But yeah, just use the previous items then. In some sense, it's an upgrade from the first option. You can kinda mix it together and make the internal structure even stronger. Remember the internal support from the box earlier? Yeah, forget about that. If you have any extra cups or paper towel tubes, just cut them down to size and put it inside the box. Easy. Assuming you don't only have cardboard, I do think it's the easiest option on the list. Maybe you already have some other things that you use as a visor. It could be any plastic organizer or container that you buy at your local Daiso or DIY store. They probably cost a few bucks each. No good size options, but if you already have it around your house, then yeah, go use it. Much more if the length and width are close enough to what you want and you have some room of error to play around with, as compared to my Billy bookshelf and the Viz Media manga. But now, you can put a flat top on it and kinda even out the bumps that those containers may have. Yeah, it could leave some small dents in the book, but it's probably just negligible damage. But I'd rather not regardless. Honestly, if you don't care, then just go ahead use whatever. As long as you have an evenly spread out base and a flat top, huzzah, flat top visor. Like I said, an evenly spread out base. If not, it will bend or crumple, because I did try it. I used multiple layers of hard cardboard-ish material and it still bent. So what I did was I put a support in the middle and it worked. But overall, these kinds of material aren't hard or strong enough for these builds. Some stuff that you can use as the flat top is just take a cardboard again, cut a piece, and you're done. Some harder pieces that you can use are any old hardcover books that you don't use or calendars, since they're basically useless after the year ends. So if you have a couple lying around, use that. Other stuff you can use are foam board, foam sheets, or PP corrugated boards. So basically anything flat, like I said. So hopefully you can find something around your house, or some of these things could be much cheaper in your country. Go ahead and find out. So here's just an example of me making the flat top visor using a couple of paper cups and an XPS foam. And with hot glue gun, yeah, you can stick anything. Just basic stuff. So here it is, done. It's almost perfect, but my cutting of the flat top, the foam it's on, is not exactly level. But other than that, it works well. Could I have made it better? Yeah, but you go do that. So here's with it with some books on top. Something that is still within option 2, but it's an upgrade from bricks, would be polystyrene boards or XPS foam. Something that's basically already a block and quite sturdy and much lighter than a brick. However, the polystyrene was very noisy and also made a lot of mess. So I mostly used the XPS foam, but it is moderately pricey. Let me take a step back. Let's do a short comparison, and I'll just put floral foam because I've heard someone using it. Maybe your cousin got married and you haven't thrown it out, so I guess use it. In short, XPS is the best, quite pricey. It's hard to cut because it's very dense. Next is polystyrene. Polystyrene is the cheapest and actually quite decent. It will snap when bent, but it's much stronger to compression. So as a visor, it works well. For floral foam, honestly no, just use cardboard. But if you must use it, use a flat top to distribute the weight evenly, since you know it's very brittle. Alright, that's nothing complicated. Let's just jump straight into how I use XPS foam to make my visor. So I measured the sizes and drew lines with a pencil, then I made multiple passes to cut it, because it is very dense. A hot knife or a hot wire cutter would be much easier, but I only need so much tools for this. So I finally cut it into 2 blocks. I needed a 3rd block actually, but I think I kinda suck at cutting. Like, there's so much of this, and basically these 2 are fine because the tops are flat, which I relied on so I can stack them easily. But like the 3rd block, since each of these are about 5 centimeters, cutting just about 3 centimeters in, yeah, it was a bad cut. This is a really tall cut to do. Like from this I get, but from here, yeah, I couldn't get it even. This, which took me an hour to do, this is about 1, 2, 3, 9. Yeah, about 9 pieces of like the hard thing from a calendar and cardboard. It took me an hour for this. Just this. But okay, yeah. So now we got the pieces. 5, 5, 3. Now we got it 13 centimeters. Not sure if I want to put it at the top or maybe I can sandwich it in the bottom right here. But huzzah. And to top it off, maybe I can put just any empty paper covering on top. But it does work. Same width. Yep, so nothing's overextending or anything. But overall, I'm not sure how many hours just on this. So here it is, the 2 XPS foam plus a stack of cardboards that I taped together. Afterwards, I glued it together and I wrapped a piece of paper, so it looks much cleaner. So here's how it looks. Sorry for the vertical video, but I'm too lazy to re-record it. Finally, at number 3, wooden book visors. Starting from here, I'm not gonna go too deep because I didn't make one myself, but I do have one right here. Compared to most of the flat top visors that I listed, wooden book visors don't really require an evenly spread out base for it, as the material is usually much stronger and thicker. While I can kinda do it, the only thing I have to cut it is a handsaw, and I'm not confident in my cutting skills, as you know previously. Most videos I watch had use a circular saw to cut the woods, and yeah, I don't have that. Also, why use wood when box do job? Put box, put book, book visor. But if you're gonna make it anyway, it's just the basic thing. Measure the main body to fit your shelf and the books. Then for equally sized legs or 2 equally sized legs. To have it more in depth, you can check Manga Sloth's video here. Again, links in the description. So to connect the pieces, you can either screw the screws in, that sounds weird, or you can just hammer in some nails. So here's one I have lying around my house. I don't think it's for anything heavy, I think it's just used for spices. And yeah, nailed in. It might be a bit weaker, but you can try using wood glue or super glue to connect the pieces. Then place some heavy books or weights on each end as you wait for the glue to set. Just follow the instructions on the glue. And if you can't cut the wood yourself, try looking nearby if there's any service that can cut a specific size of wood for you. Then just order them. Then all you need to do is just glue it together. Some other materials to look out for are melamine boards, plywood, chipboards, and just see whatever. Though I do have a better riser idea later in the video that uses those boards. All in all, I didn't make the wooden book risers myself, so you tell me if it works. Alright, fourth on the list is 3D printed book risers. So far, I see it listed on Etsy mostly, and the prices seem to range from $8 to $15, or you could try 3D modeling one yourself and sending it to your 3D printer shop. I could too, however my Maya expired and... Wait, let me just check a bit. Holy heck! $1,370 a year? What the heck? I don't have that money! So yeah, if you can adjust the size of the 3D model, then you could probably fit it into any shelf that you have, and extra space underneath, as long as you don't care about it being hidden by the books in front. The fifth on the list are any type of risers that you can buy online, such as kitchen shelves. There are ones that can even expand. Some others are like the IKEA Variera, Spice Racks and all that. Moving on, you can also search for monitor risers, especially on shopping apps like Temu, since you do get a lot of varieties there. As long as you're fine with selling your data to China, and make sure to check your local shopping apps first, since the prices on Temu aren't necessarily cheaper. Those things are so inflated that Pyro wouldn't need to make any other commissions if you just used this. Some of the discounts do help, and remember, it's not time limited. They'll give you those discounts a million times. Okay, so you saved a few bucks, but now you haven't reached the minimum price for shipping. So what do? You buy a couple of junk and waste your money, then so you bought it for twice the price? So yeah, check all the options that you have. Chinese mass-produced stuff are everywhere, though with some more options on Chinese apps. Moving on, acrylic risers, which are those clear stands or risers that you can commonly find. However, they aren't particularly wide since they're mostly used for trinkets or other small stuff. Overall, a decent looking riser, however a bit pricier. And if you have an open bookshelf, you could keep something underneath and still see it through the sides. By an open bookshelf, I meant like the one I have here. Yeah, I don't have my own acrylic riser, but you can imagine just putting something underneath the riser at the end there. Okay, we're finally at the end. So for number 5, it's the half shelf riser. So this isn't my own idea. I got the inspiration from Grey Matter manga. So what I'll be doing is kinda innovating it a bit, or at least make it more accessible to most people. So what was shown is that he uses an IKEA Billy bookcase, and you can apparently buy the Billy plank shelves one by one. So he cuts it in half and basically makes a half shelf. It's honestly quite simple, and I'm just baffled how I didn't think of this myself. Probably because I don't use power tools much. Out of all the risers I listed, I think this is the best one and the most durable one, as instead of resting on the shelf below it, adding even more weight along with the books on top of it, the riser here is carried by its own supports. So how he does it is, he drills holes into each side of the shelves. The Billy shelf is then cut into two, giving you 2 half shelves. Then he uses some pegs gotten from the IKEA parts and services into the holes he just drilled. Afterwards, he drills peg holes onto the half shelves so it can rest nicely on the peg as a support. And there you have it, the half shelf riser. Again, links below. If you want to do it his way, make sure to check his page. So what if you don't use an IKEA shelf? Doesn't matter. Remember the boards earlier? Melamine boards, MDF boards, chipboards, plywood, pinewood, or any kind of plank thing especially helps if you can order it exactly to the sizes that you want. Now instead of going through the hassle of drilling holes and installing pegs, you can actually just use those adhesive shelf support clips. Some of them claim to hold like 30 kg, which I don't believe it that much. Something like a 60cm shelf fully loaded with manga is maximum 10 kgs. So it should still work even if it can only support half of the weight that they claim. So yeah, here's something I found on Temu. And like I said, 30 kg. And they kinda do test it, but you're not gonna do that, right? So do the basic thing of measuring the height and marking down the place you'll be sticking the supports on. Stick on the adhesives, then place the board. Tada! Half shelf riser. Sorry to say I didn't do it myself because I found it too late after already spending too much on other useless stuff. So let's tally up the numbers. I'll be listing the prices of all the tools I bought and probably used in the process of making the video. I won't be adding the price of anything I already have at hand. I suppose this is kinda just for self-reflection. So okay, boxes, express foam, tools, Evafoam, Alpha 8V cutting mat, a really cheap blue mousepad I used as a cutting mat before I got the A3 cutting mat, the Alpha cutting tools. So the total 49.09. Before I end this video, I'd like to introduce my sponsor, my parents. Thank you for supporting my continued existence. So that's about it. So far, I think my current stuff is just a way to kind of justify the stupid purchases I've made. So there's a bit more of that to come. Things like storytime stuff or covering topics I like or just ranting on anything is within my list too. I also need to thank my subscribers. Thank you to me, and me. Wait, what? Thanks I guess? Wait, no, don't leave. If you enjoyed the vid, you guys better subscribe so it's not just me in here. So, thanks for watching the vid and have a good day. Yes.